I heard something some time ago that a healthy individual, a son of God, should have as many places in his life open and available to God to operate in as possible. And that you can find such rooms, you can construct such rooms in which you allow the Father to come in and manifest Himself. In these rooms, God comes in and manifests Himself. He co-unions with you in these rooms, these particular rooms. And those rooms are various circumstances that you purposely put in place and you enter into, where you can allow God to come in and manifest Himself. There are many. Those rooms are places where you deal with life. You deal with reality. You deal with will. You deal with faith. Where you deal with these realities, these forces, where you work, but the outcome of your work is not in your hands, where the outwork of your work is in the future, and it does not finally depend on you, but it requires for you to work towards an unknown future. And there are circumstances which you can put into place wherein that occurs. It's circumstances that are slices of life, of real life, where real life occurs. For example, raising a child. Every child of God should have a responsibility relationship with a child, preferably all your life. Every one of us. Because when you deal with a child, you're dealing with life. You're dealing with a certain reality. You're dealing with reality from a perspective. But it is reality. It is nature. It is true. It is life. When you deal with a child, when you enter into your relationship, a responsibility relationship with a child, not a peer-to-peer relationship, but a responsibility relationship with a child. In that relationship, you can experience God. You can experience the manifestation of God. You can see God at work in you. You can see God at work in the child. You can see God at work in the relationship. You is a microcosm of life. And you are looking at it, you are involved at looking at it from a certain perspective. Not a peer-to-peer, lost in the source perspective, but a perspective of wisdom, a perspective, an overview perspective. And in that relationship, you are also in relationship with God. You learn about your relationship with God. Because in that relationship, you have to talk to God. You have to involve God at some level. Because the outcome is uncertain. The outcome requires faith. And because the outcome is so important, the future of a child is no laughing matter. Your responsibility to a child is no laughing matter. Nothing that you can take lightly. So you have to be at the throne. You have to be at the throne, holding on to the horns of your salvation in the presence of the Father when you are in a responsibility relationship with a child. So you have to depend on God within that responsibility. You better depend on God. Because all your work is not what's going to determine the outcome. Your sincerity is not going to be what determines the outcome. Your intentions are not going to be what determines the outcome. But God and faith in God. That's what's going to determine the outcome. And so in that room, in that relationship, you can practice manifesting God. You can practice allowing God to glorify Himself, allowing God to come through that relationship. And be active in that relationship and guide that relationship to a good outcome. And so in that relationship, you have the opportunity to seek God, opportunity to depend on God, an opportunity to see God at work in that relationship. And that is a circumstance, a slice of life, a room in your life where you can experience God in a manifold way, in a real way, inside that room, raising a child, being responsible for a child. Another one is a sport. Every child of God should practice a sport. For the same reasons as every child of God should have a responsibility relationship with a child, for the same reason, because it's a microcosm of life. It's a chess game of real life where you utilize all the good things that you know in order to affect the outcome. And then the outcome is not in your hands. Finally, the outcome is in faith in God. In a participation in sport, you can practice allowing God to come in and do things through you, for you, by you, inside you, despite you. You have the opportunity, the circumstance in which you can practice being the Christ in a sport. Because in a sport you have to master yourself. You have to practice self-mastery successfully, and the rewards and the punishments. The reward for success and the punishment for failure are immediate. And it is something where you can practice many of the aspects of living faith, which is belief followed by action, and you have the opportunity to do it right there. If a ball is coming to you, you have to believe it's coming to your left, it's coming to your right. And then you have to commit to that belief and then follow that belief with some appropriate action. And that's living faith. And that teaches you a whole lot about the reality of living faith. It teaches you a lot about hearing the voice of God. It teaches you a lot about having faith in the Word of God, in the guidance of God, in the immediacy of God. It allows you to practice getting out of the way and letting the Spirit of the knowledge, of the wisdom, of the Spirit of God to come through immediately and execute something immediately, and allows you to experience the ride, a sport. In a sport you practice life. It's a microcosm of life. Every dynamic represented in life, that exists in life, every human dynamic, mental dynamic, heart dynamic, spirit dynamic that exists in life exists in a sport. Most of all, a relationship with God. Because if you practice the truth in a sport, you are interacting with God. Because the way that a ball bounces, it bounces in a reality created by God. And the ball reacts to your actions in a way that was created by God. And your body and your mind and your eyes and your hands, they function in a way that was created by God. And it's a dance, it's a symphony. And your job is to be there, experience it, and get out of the way. Get out of the way. Watch and experience this. Stand still and watch the deliverance of Yahweh, the salvation of Yahweh. That's all your job. After you do everything, stand still and the salvation of Yahweh. So after you execute all the right things in a sport, then that last fraction of a second, stand and see the shot happen. Experience the culmination of your faith happen right there, 100 times in an hour. Yeah, in a sport, you can experience God. So, sport is one of those rooms. Raising a child is another one. Having a pet for the same reasons as dealing with a child, but in a different way. Growing a garden. In all of these areas, you can practice raising a plant. If you're not growing a garden, just raising a plant, taking care of a plant. In all of these areas, you practice life. You interact with life. You find life. And whenever you interact with life, you interact with the spirit of life. You interact with the spirit behind that life, the spirit that is that life.